I find myself often asking, how do I tell if I'm an adult? I've met older people that are immature and act like they're still in high school, so what does it take to be an adult? The best I could come up with is not dying before you turn 18. So I have a hard time identifying as an adult, especially since I still feel like a kid. That being said, I want to talk with other, quote, adults and learn from them. After all, the quickest and typically the most painless way to learn is through others. Somehow, we're adults. So welcome back. Yeah, this is your first time doing the podcast since, I mean, it's come a long way. And when you did it, it was at my apartment, and it was on my dining room table and recorded on my Mac, just like on the microphones that are built into my computer. And
yeah, that's true. Yeah, we didn't have real microphones or real room to do it in.
Yep.
So,
I even built the table specifically for this room for this purpose.
Well, and I brought the cups specifically for this event.
The retired principal since 2021.
Retired principal.
Congratulations. What does it feel like to retire?
I think what I told my staff at my retirement party was retirement's not for wimps. There's a lot of sides to it. One, there's the financial side and managing the money, but there's also the side of what are you going to do each morning when you get up. And a lot of it will depend on where you come from. If, for instance, the more you are into your job and it's a big part of your life, the harder it is to retire if you don't have any hobbies or plans of how you're going to use your time. I felt like in myself that I put a lot of effort into my work, but I also had a life outside of that, and so it was almost maybe a 50-50 or maybe 60% work, 40% life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm having to rebalance my life now and figure out, what do the days look like? And there's some days I wake up and I go, wow, what am I going to do today? And it can be overwhelmingly pleasant or overwhelmingly depressing.
Scary
at times. Yeah. I'm so used to being around people, and it's taken some time and effort to kind of back out of that and learn to enjoy walking a nature trail or something like that. And I do that on a regular basis. But then when I walk it, I'm always looking for people to talk to as well. And so, I'm enjoying it. I absolutely want to continue down this road, even though there are things I wouldn't mind doing, other jobs or careers that I wouldn't mind doing. It's like, no, I've been working for almost 40 years now. It's time for me to enjoy it. And here's another perspective too. I'm kind of looking, we've got the travel trailer. We plan on, when my wife, retires, we plan on doing some traveling around the country, around the world, whatnot. And I realize now at 61 years old, I'm probably only going to be able to do that till age 75, maybe age 80. And so I've got less than 20 years that I'm going to have to do this. So we need to start making some plans, which we will do, kind of our bucket list of where is it that we want to go, what is it we want to do over the next 15 to 20 years. And then you get to that point where physically you're not wanting to pull a travel trailer anyhow. And how much are you going to want to get on a plane and even travel to Europe or something like that, into areas that you need to be very aware of where you are. So
and you also need to balance that with your, like you said earlier, with your finances too.
Yeah.
Because if you try to do all the traveling you want to do in a year or two, you're gonna blow out that retirement savings.
That's right.
And that's not something you want to set yourself up for. You have to balance it out and do it at a good enough pace to where you're making those vacations. You go, okay, these probably do you make like a priority list? I would imagine.
Yes.
You go, this is places I want to go to first.
Yes.
These are places I would like to go to, but it's not detrimental if I never go.
Yeah. And then some of it's built around the age too. For example, I want to haul my travel trailer with a caravan of other trailers to Alaska, and that's
that would be fun.
That's a heck of a drive to go there. And but I don't want to wait till I'm 75 to 80 years old to do that. I'm thinking I need to do that probably between time Missy retires in about 3 years.
Missy being your wife.
Missy
Just,
being
people
my wife,
listening.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
To age 70. If I'm going to make that long trip, I probably need to do it by age 70 at the latest, when I physically have the best ability
Yeah.
at that point. So
Yeah. I mean, for sure, something like I was thinking while you were talking about all this is a very pivotal point. I mean, there's a lot of pivotal points in people's lives from what I'm learning.
Milestones, yep.
Right. And when you retire and how you retire are going to set up what the next 20, 30 years look like.
Yes.
Because, a huge thing that a lot of people do, retirement will kill a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yes.
Because like you said, that work was their life. They would get done with work and they'd watch TV, they'd eat dinner, and that was the extent of their evenings.
Yeah.
And they were just trying to soak up time until the next day when they went back to work. And unfortunately, when you take that work out, they just do that thing that they did to kill time all the time, which is watch TV and, suck in oxygen and breathe, and unfortunately, I think the average, I think it's 11 years that people stay retired before, it kills a lot of people because they just don't have that. If you read anything about retirements, a lot of what they say is have plans to do things when you're retired to keep you busy.
I know somebody recently told me that their husband had retired once, and he stayed retired for less than a month and drove himself crazy and had to go back to work. And so now he's working and just turned 70 years old and continues to work every day. And he does play golf on a real regular basis, usually Saturdays and Sundays. But, you can only play so much golf at the golf club. And you
have to have more than one hobby, I would assume.
Absolutely.
You have to dabble in a lot of things.
Yes. And, and again, trying to figure that out. And unfortunately, what happens with a lot of people is they become very passive about the whole process. They're
not so much worried about retiring; they're worried about not working.
Well, but they become passive in their life, and they, one of the things I've learned with people, there's those people that are very pleasant people, that are very relaxed people, and they're always great to sit down and chit chat with a little bit, but they also don't push the envelope with you or themselves or anybody else. And then you've got those people that are, I'll call kind of high maintenance, that have strong opinions about things, that are always pushing the envelope on themselves and everybody else. And trying to figure out where you fit in life with those kinds of people, and where do you want to be in your life with those kinds of people, can be real challenging at times. I find family members, and as you're trying to work with your different family members, where do they fall in that spectrum of I'm a really kicked back person and easy to talk to, or am I that go-getter that does everything?
There's the people who overschedule, and there's the people who underschedule.
Exactly.
I'm definitely an overscheduler. I pack more into my day than I can probably do on a normal basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
So,
are you one of those, you would say?
I lean more in that direction. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I would say I'm pretty good about, on most days, not overscheduling, but sometimes it's just, some things slip through the crack and get pushed to the next day.
Yeah.
But I try not to do it on a regular basis. I try to get everything done.
Well, and here at retirement, I'm trying not to overdo that. I'm trying to manage my time, and there's projects I want to do, and with my house and with my travel trailer, and I'm not saying I have to have them all done within 3 months or 6 months or even a year. I mean, some of this is going to probably take me several years to get through, and that's okay.
Yeah,
as long as I'm moving forward.
You have plenty of years ahead of you if you do it right.
And I'm already checking things off the list, slowly but surely.
So what's some of the things on your list?
Well, I've got a lot of work I want to do to the house. I'll do remodeling, new cabinets in there, getting ready to probably redo the roof on the house and add a permanent back porch onto it versus the temporary one that's been on there for years. Want to redo some of the outside of the house and put some hardy plank type fake wood, concrete wood, as they call it.
Just spruce the house up.
Yeah, make it look nicer. Yeah. And
all the stuff you didn't have time to do whenever you were working.
Or the money, well, it's kind of funny. You think you'd had more money, but my priorities were a little different in many cases, to create experiences for the family versus dumping money into the house.
Right.
And so different people come up in different times and have different priorities. Yes, keep the house maintained, keep it working, but to
make sure you're not caught up too much in not living life.
Yeah, exactly. So you never know when your number's called, and you got to step away for the rest of it.
So what other hobbies besides taking care of the house? Because that's only going to take a couple years.
Yeah. Well, and again, we've got the traveling with the travel trailer.
Sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, sprinkled throughout. And another trip. Well, it looks like this coming summer we may go up to Maine again.
Ooh.
And so that'll probably take about 4 weeks to do that. And then I'd like to make another trip to Yellowstone. Also want to go out there at some point where I can do the antelope hunt that the Airstream Club has done. And I have the same rifle that my grandfather and my father shot an antelope with.
Talk about it.
It's a Savage model 1899. Means it first came out in 1899. This particular one was released or was manufactured in about 1914 or 1915. I was actually hoping to get out there at its 100th anniversary and really play it up, but it just didn't happen at that time in my life. But they every year the Airstream Club, or most every year, they have a antelope hunt in Medicine Bow, Wyoming, which is out in the middle of nowhere.
Probably gorgeous.
Yes, and a group of Airstreamers meet up out there. They you have to pull permits or try to pull permits ahead of time, and they go onto some, I think, private properties to hunt antelope. And then if you get one, you sign the big banner that you were at the antelope rally.
You're going to eat it, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. You take it and have a butcher harvest the animal.
Teach you how to do it.
Well, and then they typically put it on dry ice and
ship it back
and ship
for
it
you.
back, for
you.
you.
Yeah,
so
we could. I mean, we can get you to do it yourself if you want. Save you some money.
All right. Well,
I can get you to come hunting with me one day.
We'll figure that out at some point.
All animals are. I mean, they're all the same.
Oh yeah,
same
all
thing
basics.
pretty much.
Yep. Same cuts of meat.
Yep.
So anyhow, that rifle's a beautiful rifle, and
it's got a specific caliber. Do you remember the caliber?
Yeah, it's the caliber. It was originally called the 250-3000. 250-3000, being a 25 caliber bullet that traveled at 3,000 foot a second. That round was actually designed by Newton, the scientist.
Oh, really?
Yes, it was, and it was the first bullet to exceed 3,000 foot a second. And they used an 87 grain bullet originally.
Which is a relatively small grain bullet compared to most of the hunting rounds used now.
That's correct. And but it was, and even to this day, it's not a slow bullet at 3,000 foot a second. These days, you don't find it in that size bullet. You typically find it in a 100 grain bullet, and it runs, I don't know, 2,900 foot a second, something like that. But it's a lever action rifle. It's got a built-in magazine, holds like 5 or 6 rounds in it. And then a Weaver 4X scope was added to the top of it. It kind of looks more time, even though it was probably a 1950s scope that was on it.
Yeah, but it's definitely not a brand new, Leupold or Vortex scope.
No.
Are you going to change out the scope for when you go hunting?
I don't know. I haven't thought that far yet with it. I hate to mess with it in a way,
Yeah, but that scope is not helping you.
No.
The technology of scopes has changed tremendously since then.
Well, and here's the thing. Most of these people, there's so many antelope out in this part of Wyoming that most people are getting them within 200 yards anyhow.
Yeah, but with a 4-power scope, and I know you're not going to believe this from shooting competitions, but 200 yards with a 4-power scope when you're killing an animal is a lot more difficult than you'd think about. Because where we hunt, we're doing typically most of what we do is within 100 yards, and I'm using a 3x9 scope in a 30-06.
Okay.
So I'm using a much more powerful scope than that 4-power, and because shot placement is everything. It's not just on an AR, because you shoot competitions as well. On an AR, we use BDC reticles, bullet drop compensation reticles.
Yes.
So it shows you on the little image that shows up in your scope, the different, you have different holdovers that are marked on it that show if you're shooting at something that's 400 yards, you have a little post for 400, you have one for 500, 600, 2, 3, all the things. And so it becomes easier, but you're shooting at a big metal target and you're just trying to hit it.
Yes.
How many times do you miss it?
Yeah.
And then can you put it specifically on one point of that target?
Yes.
Because that's what you're trying to do on something that is capable of moving.
Yes.
And you might not have the best of. It's not going to always be broadside to you.
Yeah.
It could be facing you. And a lot of shots that that our group of hunters have done is like straight on shots where it's facing you. And you're aiming at a head at that point. You're trying to hit a brain on an animal at that size or at that distance. So I just would think that if you're shooting at 200 yards, you want as much magnification as you can so you have the utmost confidence, because you've hunted before, right?
Very little, actually. Very little.
Have you ever put down an animal?
No.
So
I say it not in a hunting situation.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, in a hunting situation. But have you ever seen an animal that you were going to shoot at while you were hunting?
Yes.
Do you remember the adrenaline dump that you got from that?
Oh yeah.
It's so intense.
Yes.
That you need everything on your side
Absolutely.
to help you out. And that's just my thought process when it goes into keeping that 1950s scope is you're going to have something at 200 100 to 200 yards probably.
Yep.
And you're going to be trying to hit a specific part of that animal, and then you're going to have a obsolete piece of technology.
Yep.
It's like trying to FaceTime somebody on a Nokia, you know what I mean, from like a block phone from the 2001.
Well, and a couple of things. I mean, I hear where you're coming from on that, and you are very right to make sure you're making that.
You definitely can do it with that, but I would just for somebody who's not experienced.
And part of the hunting out there is that it's all in the wide open. You're in the plains. You're not in the woods or anything.
Right.
And
helps a little bit.
Yeah, and then in the cases that I know of with my grandfather and my father, the animal was not moving. And now my grandfather claimed it was almost quarter mile that he shot it. Now I don't believe that it was that far out.
Let him have his moment.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not around any longer to question about it.
And there's no video evidence, camera evidence saying that it wasn't that.
Exactly.
So you can't prove him wrong.
Exactly. And so, and I know the one my father shot was within probably the last 15 years. And
was it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he really wasn't a hunter at all.
Yeah.
He just went out there with the rifle and with a group of people and shot it and brought it home.
He was a hunter as a kid.
Not much so.
Mainly small game.
Squirrel, that kind of
squirrel
stuff.
and little rodents and stuff like that with his father.
Yeah.
A lot of 22s, 22 caliber.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I don't know. I mean that's a question in my mind. In that one of my daughters and son-in-law are real into hunting. Will I do much more hunting or not? And I don't know. I might not.
It's so much fun.
The
camaraderie of it, being out there with a bunch of guys. I mean, it's sometimes, girlfriends will go too, and but mostly it's just a big group of guys, and everyone's talking shit about each other, and
that sounds like a competition shooting too.
But on 10.
Okay.
But on 10, competition shooting is like 5 out of 10. It's the camaraderie of it. I mean, that's the whole point of most hobbies, anyways. Is if you don't have good camaraderie. I mean, that's probably why so many people love golf.
If
you go out and golf by yourself, it's not as fun as if you have a group of guys out there that are all drinking and talking shit.
And again, that's a big part is the competition shooting is as much about the social life as it is about the actual shooting and pushing yourself, trying to achieve a higher level. I enjoy the competition part of it. And so I don't have to win, but it sure is fun when you push yourself and push others to do the best you can.
Yeah, and then you run a course and you go, all right, you guys go take a stab at it. You're not going to get close. You're not going to touch my score.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Then we talk.
I love it.
Talk trash.
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. And then it's just like, I mean, that same kind of feeling you get from sports too. When you're playing basketball or baseball or stuff like that. Everyone's kind of just. It's a good time. It's a good time.
Yep.
So what are you going to do to help? Like, do you have any plans of like doing anything to make sure your body lasts as long as it can for retirement and as well as your mind?
And that's one of the things that Missy and I have even talked about in the last couple of days more and more. So with some of the competitive shooters I saw as they reached like close to age 70, the ones that were overweight really dropped off tremendously. Their capability of competing and running the courses and so forth, and then you have those people that have stayed in good shape, and so I'm already starting to work on our diet some, and you and your partner have to, if y'all are eating the same meals each night, you have to have discussions about this and be on the same page. And so we've been talking about how we might approach this, and a lot more talking to go. But just like cutting carbs back in your diet is a big thing. Cutting sugar back in your diet is a big thing. So and then some form of exercise. I've started with some real simple things like typically when I go out and walk these trails, which will be a couple times a week, I'm typically walking 2 to 3 miles in a morning. But now I need to push that like to another level. So trying to figure out, and one, I need to do it preferably with a group of people.
Makes it easier.
Makes it easier, more motivating, and you build in that social aspect of it. But also, do I want to go to a gym, for instance, and get on the machines, get on the treadmill or the Stairmaster or whatever, or do I want to? We live very close to a ski school out here, and
water skiing.
Okay. And I did a lot of that when I was younger, and it was some of the best shape I was ever in. And I'm debating whether to approach them about volunteering. And what's more fun than going out there with a bunch of people having fun? Water skiing either behind a boat or on a.
They have those tracks.
Yeah, the lines. I forget what they call those now. They'll pull around the lake and getting some exercise that way too. Mm-hmm. So have
you considered getting a personal trainer?
I have, yeah. I've actually been thinking about that, especially to get me started with it.
It's a good way to learn.
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
A great way to learn.
And so again, Missy and I had that discussion here the other day. And in our cases, not necessarily doing it together, but trying to reach the same goals and maybe doing it separately where we're in a comfort zone. I can't be her trainer. She can't be mine.
Oh, that's a good way to end your marriage.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like putting us in a canoe together instead of giving us individual kayaks.
You got to set yourself up for success.
Yes,
which
is another hobby that we're revisiting now too, is paddling kayaks around.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
The good part is that most of the hobbies that you're talking about are physical things.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's going to keep you busy. The huge part about older people that they don't realize, or as you get older, that happens is you lose bone density. Mm-hmm. And bone density. That's why so many the majority of people that break bones are older people.
Yes.
And so there's ways you can increase your bone density, believe it or not. Okay. Did you know that lifting weights actually increases your bone density?
I have heard that before. I hadn't remembered that, but that's a good point.
The more of a strain you put on your frame, with being your bones, the more your bones go, okay, this is what we this is something we have to do, and they get stronger because of it. Does it increase bone size as well, or just the density of it?
Just the density.
Yeah. Well, and another big thing as you get older, if I understand, is drinking enough water. Too.
That's not even as you're older thing. That's an all the time.
Well,
thing.
It is an all the time thing, but from what I understand, from helping.
That's one of these, Keith.
Yeah,
this half gallon.
I just brought my smaller one for the show. Your
little sip one.
Yeah,
yeah, I got you.
And heard an article the other day about the mental benefits of making sure that you're hydrated, and of course, having run the outdoor environmental school. That was something we were always pushing with the kids. Kids don't drink water, number one, many times, and they don't drink enough of it.
Yeah.
And the way to drink it is just to continually sip on it all day long.
Well, the way I think about it, this is actually one of the things I thought about that actually got me to drink more water. That's because I was like, man, it's so hard to drink enough water. They say that the litmus test for drinking enough water is the color of your urine, right?
Yes.
So if it's clear, you're doing a good job of hydrating.
Yep.
There's such thing as too much, but at that point, it's so hard to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, how come I can't do that? But I was like, But at that time, I was like, it's nothing for me to drink 12 beers in 2 hours. He asked me to drink 12 beers in 2 hours, and it's oh okay, that's a Saturday. You know what I mean? That's nothing. You know, it's why can I do that with beer, but I can't do that with water? And I was like, oh, it's because when I'm walking around with a beer, that's what I'm holding on. That's like my goal is to drink that. And I'm like, okay, when you drink a beer, you don't drink a beer because unless you start drinking because you're thirsty. But once you get to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth beers, you're like, oh, I'm not thirsty anymore. You're just drinking it anytime you feel like you can drink it. And so once you realize that it's a mentality, it's like, okay, I just need to drink water when I feel like I can drink water. Because if I wait till I'm thirsty, I'm already dehydrated.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's what I do is I go, can I consume water at this point? And will it make me throw up? If the answer is yes, I don't drink water. But if the answer is no, I'm like, okay, I can drink some water right now.
Yeah.
And it keeps you full throughout the day. It helps satiate your hunger somewhat.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're hydrated, you feel better. You have more energy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's great for your skin. Great for your brain. Has got a lot of water in it.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. So, and your body needs it.
Yep.
Also, keep
70% water.
And it'll keep you from getting kidney stones too.
Keep you from getting kidney stones. It helps your kidneys work. All your urine function, everything a part of that keeps everything working. You know, a lot of people, kidney failure is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
Kidneys are, what filters out your blood. So got to take care of them.
Yep.
So yeah, that's something I focus on a lot. Now, what about you're keeping your mind busy so that way you don't start to develop dementia or something like that?
Well, and part of that would be, the construction work I'm looking at doing. And I met with a contractor this week about doing the roof on the back porch, rebuilding or building a permanent roof for the back porch. But I'm also doing some homework along with any of those projects. That's a little piece of it. Really, the biggest thing at this point has been managing my finances. And I say that, managing, I mean, there's the pension side of it, but there's also the investments that I have. And I've been doing some different things with them since I retired, and I've taken a big chunk of my money and put it into a particular mutual fund company that has some really great tools. And actually, mutual funds are the old way anymore too. I don't really have mutual funds. I have ETFs. And
isn't it EFTs?
Is it EFTs?
I think, yeah.
No, traded. No, it's.
Oh yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
No, it is
EFT?
Traded funds. Wait a minute.
Electronically traded funds or something like that. Can you Google that, Colton? What an EFT or ETF?
It's ETFs, yeah.
ETF. What is an ETF?
Exchange traded funds. There you go.
Yep.
That's the new version of mutual funds.
Yeah.
And the biggest difference with them is,
I'm thinking of NFT is what I'm thinking of, right?
Okay.
Do you know what an NFT is?
No.
We can talk about that. Continue your talk.
The ETFs are can be traded any time during the daytime. A mutual fund is typically traded at the end of the daytime. And so, if for instance, a lot of times in the middle of the day, the funds will drop to their lowest. The market will drop to its lowest point of the day. So it's high either at the very beginning of the day or the very end of the day.
Right.
And so you can kind of play that to your benefit, whichever way you want to. But I'm investing in some sector markets now instead of just the general ones that follow the indexes. I mean, I still have a lot of money in the S&P 500 funds and
index funds,
total stock market funds. Yeah, they're almost all index funds. And they're too reliable as a general rule.
It feels comfortable to have index funds.
Exactly, and I can sleep at night.
Right. Do you want to? Do you have a good explanation for what an index fund is for people who are listening that might not know?
Yeah. Well, basically, many mutual funds were managed by people or person or a group of people, and they charged a fairly large fee,
management fees
mm-hmm. to manage those funds. And company Vanguard was the one that invented index funds. And
really, I didn't know that. I didn't
To
know
the best of my knowledge, yeah, I'm pretty sure they were.
that's where I learned most of the information I have learned about investing was from their owner or their creator that passed away.
Yeah,
I watched a lot of his YouTube videos. Believe it or
Okay.
not, that was Jack Bogle.
yeah. And basically, what he said is just follow the index,
Yeah.
the S&P 500, the Dow.
He was saying that he one of the things he said, the creator of Vanguard, he said that less than 1% of funds in a 30-year period beat an index fund.
Yeah,
So are
exactly.
you going to try and gamble and hope that what you're investing in that isn't an index fund is in that 1%, less than 1%, or are you just going to go ahead and go, okay, he believes investing is a long haul strategy.
Yep.
Shouldn't invest anything if you're planning on taking it out within 5 years.
Yep.
And he also says that index, essentially what he describes an index fund as is it's something that just tracks a market.
Yeah.
So
It follows the market literally.
So an S&P 500 is essentially, it's supposed to be Standard and Poor's created it.
Yep.
That's what S&P stands for, and then
Top 500 companies in the country.
yep, that's what it's supposed to be.
Yep.
The top 500 biggest companies in capital, basically.
Yeah.
Revenue stream or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so the way he says it is, it's like people talk about stocks, they talk about risk, and he goes, this is one of the most. It seems risky because it's a stock, and you're not guaranteed returns. But he goes, do you think the 500 biggest companies in the United States are all going to go under at the same time?
Yeah.
And he goes, if they do, what would you imagine the current state of the United States would be if they all went under at the same time?
Yes.
Clearly something is going very wrong,
Yep.
and currency no longer matters at that point.
Yep.
You're worried about, do you have bullets? Do you have skills to survive,
Yes.
not having businesses that make money?
Exactly. And that's, the chances of that happen are slim to nil. But like you said, we're in a whole nother world if it starts coming apart at that level.
That's why it feels so low risk to
Yeah.
have something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So the S&P 500, they're going to have a ton of Apple stocks, Microsoft stocks, Amazon stocks,
Netflix, all the big companies
all the
right
big
now.
companies are they're going to have investments in, and so now I've got into some sector index funds, which would be like
Tech.
there's energy,
Pharmaceuticals.
energy, tech, healthcare.
Specific portions of those
Materials,
Yep.
which gets into like building materials, stuff
Lumber.
like that. One that's really done me well here recently is consumer discretionary funds. And that's you as a consumer, you buy things when you have money to buy them. And this what and invest in is things that people buy that are just little things, when they have extra money to do it. And that market's been doing really well lately.
What is that? Is that like stationery, like paper and stuff like that, or what is that?
Yeah, but I think you get into like some of your like deodorants and aftershaves, and just get
Like
general
grocery store products.
Grocery store products,
Stuff
yeah.
that you constantly use.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Real estate is doing pretty good right now. I've got some real estate sector.
Depending upon where you're at. If you're
Yeah.
in like California and New York right now, you're losing money on real estate, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And if you're in Florida or Texas, you're making some money on some real estate. The real estate prices here.
Well, and yeah, with that said, even though like the real estate market is so hot right now in Florida, it's not like this fund is going through the roof. But is it growing? Yeah, it's growing. So I've diversified my portfolio a little bit, and between I'm managing some of the money. The company that I'm working with, that I have the funds through, is managing part of it. I'm paying them to manage some of it, and then I have a credit union that I work with that's managing part of it. And right now I'm tracking it on a quarterly basis. I want to see which one of the three of us actually does the best.
Who's the three? Oh, the three of the.
Okay. The manager of the one fund company. Yep, the credit union, and then myself.
Yep.
And I'm also, because part of this gets into how much they're charging me to manage.
Overall, how much profit are you making minus fees?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And so the bottom line comes down to is how much money.
Which one's going to provide the most value?
Yep.
Now, where do you learn about all of this stuff at? Where have you been getting your information
Well,
from?
some of it is, I've been following the index funds for a number of years, probably 20 plus years, that just reading, general things about investment
Are you
and
interested in Are you interested in it as a subject?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I sure am.
Yeah,
And
I am too, and I know a lot of people have probably tuned out this part of the podcast too because so many people aren't. But I'm incredibly interested.
yeah,
In
and and I find it stimulating to what don't want to do is run out of money, for my retirement.
Nobody
And
wants
I've got a nice little nest egg, but I'm not rich either.
You wanna
So
explain-
I need to manage that correctly.
Do you want to explain what a nest egg is?
Well, all right. So when I retired, I worked for the county, received a state pension. Okay. I will also, in another year, be eligible to pull Social Security. So between the two of those, that provides about 75% of what my income was when I was working. But I also have been able to put back some money in various different ways. Mm-hmm. So I have a lump sum of money, and I will say it's into six digits, and what I'm trying to do is create an income off of that. This year, because I'm not eligible for Social Security, I'm taking a little bit more money out than I would like to, but that's okay. But then if I do go ahead and at age 62 and take Social Security, then I'll be able to leave that money alone and watch it grow, and then only start pulling monies out of it as it gets to certain levels that I want to.
Right.
And hopefully that'll pay for the trips that I want to take as I'm retired, or other what I'll call benefits to being a retired person.
Right.
Going out and eating, or taking that trip to Europe, or hauling the trailer to Alaska.
Buying brand new cars.
Or brand new trucks, things like that. And so, but what I want to make sure of is that principle over time doesn't reduce. I want to, and I also am interested in leaving a nest egg for my children as well. I don't think life is getting any easier for this generation. The days of pensions, state pensions, and private company pensions is really not where it was for me or my parents.
Right.
And so we're trying to work on educating them, my children, on these investments and so forth as well.
So what I would describe a nest egg as is essentially as you work through your working age, you basically take a portion of your paychecks and you stock it away. Essentially, what that would look like today would be a 401k.
Yep.
And so you take 10% of every paycheck over your course of 30 to 45 years of working, and you stock that away in an investment that makes money off of your money. Over time, you get compounding interest, and your nest egg, let's say it becomes $1 million. What the reason you call it a nest egg is because it's not like you retire, they give you $1 million, and then you spend a portion of that money until it runs out till you die.
No.
The idea is that way a nest egg is that $1 million now on its own in an investment makes, let's call it 7%. So, if you have $1 million, and just for easy math, if you get 7% off of that $1 million, that's $70,000.
Yep, per year.
And that's per year.
Yep.
So if you worked a job making $70,000 a year, you have now supplemented your income and without touching that $1 million.
That's correct.
So you could ideally continue to make, this is very basic and it's obviously a lot more mechanical than this, but you would make $70,000 a year for the rest of your life without ever touching that nest egg of $1 million. And then when you die, you would leave that $1 million to do with whatever you would like to do. Ideally, you should have a will, and then that $1 million, if you have kids, gets split between the kids, or if one of your kids does crack, you can send it to the one who doesn't do crack if that's what your values are.
Absolutely.
Or you can donate it all to charity.
Or put it in a trust for them so that they generate an income but not letting them touch the nest egg ever.
Right. The nest egg is what you want to build throughout your years.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyhow, so yeah, I find a lot of, and luckily a lady that used to work for me, the one I was telling you about, her husband couldn't retire. He's in the financial market.
He could retire, he just didn't want to.
Yeah.
Physically, he didn't want to. Yeah.
That's correct. And he's worked in the financial market now for about 40 years. And he gave me some advice on some of these sector funds to invest in and diversifying, and actually convinced me to move my money into one of these companies where I was paying lower management fees.
That's the beautiful part about index funds that I don't think we talked about.
Well,
is that they're a non-managed fund.
Yeah, that's correct.
So they don't charge management fees.
And so you've got the fund's management fee, and then there's also the organization that you're getting the fund from may be charging you
on top
of that as well. And a lot of times those fees are higher than what the management fee of the fund is.
Because essentially, with a managed fund like a mutual fund or a ETF, is that you're paying somebody who went to college and they basically decide what stocks are a part of that mutual fund at that moment, or of that ETF. Sorry, I keep thinking of NFT. It's something that's new that's being talked about, and so they basically get a fee because their job, what they went to school for, or what they're good at, is managing funds and deciding what's going to do good and what's going to do bad. And that's why they're supposed to get better returns than index funds and stuff. But then there's a difference between after you take out the fees.
Well, that's it. And so what I'm trying to watch is the bottom line. I started with this much money in this account. Each quarter, I look and see how much money do I have in there, and then look at what percentage growth or loss. I will say second quarter or third quarter this year, I took a loss, and
investing is like a roller coaster.
But which one was less of a loss than the other ones were? And so I find that very mentally stimulating. I love spreadsheets, and I've got data in spreadsheets that I'm tracking right now, kind of a high level. I'm not really digging into a lot of the details of it. It's kind of like the bottom line, you know, and what's it costing?
Yeah. Yeah. One of my what I said earlier is that the investing is like a roller coaster. There's going to be ups and downs, but the only people that get hurt are the ones that jump off.
Yeah.
So,
good point.
So I love this kind of conversation. I don't know why I just get super excited about, like, when you look at a graph and you look at what compounding interest does with time. There's two factors: is consistency and time.
Yep.
And like, if you tell some kid that if you put in $10,000 at age 18 and pull it out when you're 65, and you never add any more money to it, and you tell them how much money it was for that $10,000 investment, you're like, whoa, and you're like, that rate of return is very, very good.
Yeah, it does look very good. And you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. And I mean, we've had years of 50% growth in recent times.
Right.
And
it's all about averages, though.
Yeah,
it's all about 50%.
Yep.
Some years
with the way I'm invested right now, with the company, particularly with what the part they're managing, at my age, we've got basically 60% in the market and 40% in bonds. Now, I will say I have put a big chunk of money into cash through one of the fund managers, but I'm getting over 2% return on that, which is
not very good.
It's not very good, but right now that is very good for a cash account, a fixed guaranteed rate.
Right, because right now, during as we're recording this, the economy it's not one of its best years.
No.
So because it's not one of its best years, this is something I learned from somebody who's big into investing and talks a lot about it, is that during years when investments are going down, if you can have something that guarantees even a low interest rate, it's better to have 2% interest that's guaranteed than to get a non-guaranteed interest rate of negative 10%. You know what I mean? That's a clear thing. It's like, yes, it sucks that you're in bonds right now, but you can, once the market starts to get better, you can readjust.
Exactly.
My question is when the stocks are going down, do you tend to look at it as like it's going on sale?
There are times, that's an interesting. Yes, when the market drops down, you're looking at a time that's very good to buy if you want to. But most people panic.
They do the opposite. They sell when it's low, and they buy when it's high.
Yeah. Now, I will say at the beginning of the pandemic, back in 2000, it was March of 2000.
2000. What pandemic? Or are you talking about
COVID-19.
You're talking about 2020.
I'm sorry, 2020.
It was
I'm
like
sorry.
2000.
I'm sorry.
Like, what pandemic happened then?
Thank you. And well, actually, there was one in 2000.
I know. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I knew that there was another the SARS-CoV-1 or whatever.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So during the 2020 pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic started, realizing that this was going to be a pretty major event, I did move some money out of the market about the third day because it was dropping 3 days in a row, and I was really concerned. And so I did move a significant chunk of money out of the market.
And I don't blame you. At that time,
cash.
No one knew what was going to happen. We thought a third of the population was going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
We had no idea.
Exactly. And so, but also with that given, my pension is pretty much guaranteed. And so I knew I had that to ride on as well.
Right.
A lot of this and how you live your life with your finances is what's it going to do to your health when you're forced to live off of whatever that is, and people that are totally get into investments at a late age, or planning for their retirement at a late age, they have to take higher risk type options, and sometimes that can be stressful and can cause your health to go down. And there's a friend of mine that passed away here about 2 years ago that I truly believe that was part of the problem, is he had all of his money tied up into investments without really any guaranteed money, and he lived a really stressful life in doing that. And really, I don't know that he knew really what he was doing, and I want to be able to sleep at night. That's the bottom line. And trust me, since I retired, that is one thing. I'm doing a much better job of sleeping at night.
Yeah.
Without the stress of the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't want to worry about money either.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's very cool. Now, I'm hoping that I can convince you, because we've talked about it off of the podcast before, about you starting a YouTube channel. That'd be a fun thing of, like, one of the joys I get of doing the podcast, and some days it's not joys. I know Colton wanted me to say that. But is learning about how doing all of this, about researching, and I'm doing this while working a full-time job and having other hobbies. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things that keep me busy, and I can only imagine, with time and money on your hand, it could be a very fun thing to learn. So adding video to the podcast has been, what are we going on, 4 weeks now of learning that process and just Googling the heck out of everything, trying to figure out what we're going to do for different things and what camera to get or how to use this. We've learned a lot about recording video on iPhones and how that's not optimal for at least for our scenario and stuff just the amount of knowledge I've gained of just problem solving. I'm creating a playground of where I have to problem solve. Mm-hmm. And it's so much fun some days. Well, looking back on it, so much fun. In the moment, sometimes it was really frustrating. I'm not going to lie.
Well, and if you can imagine, at the time I was your age, was really when the first personal computers were coming out, and there was a good friend of mine and I who were very interested in that market, technology and so forth, and we've spent many evenings after our regular job trying to figure out how to do consulting work and how to make money off of it and where do you go with it. And this went on for, well over 15 years that we looked down that road. And, when you're younger, you're going to have a ton of energy, and a 40-hour work week, you still have a lot of time around that to build it. I still have the interest. What I realize is how much effort it does take to build a business, build a model, and that's where the discussions you and I have had about setting up a YouTube channel with a particular topic. I don't know that I have the youthful enthusiasm that somebody like you would have.
What do you think, Colton? You think he's got youthful enthusiasm?
I think so.
I think so.
Well,
I think so. It's just like anything else. It's just a learning process as you go.
Absolutely.
We started on a dining room table, recording it on Mac computer. It was just That's why the first quote on the board of quotes that I'm doing was you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great.
That is
so
correct.
that's my goal, is just constant improvement. And I have to remind myself of it all the time, because it's very easy to get discouraged by not being where I want to be.
Yes.
It is very easy. But instead, I've tried to flip it on its head and get motivated by where I can be, because that's the beautiful part about this country, is that everyone has for the just generically speaking, everyone has the same opportunities.
That is correct. Yeah.
And so, and you could start a business at your age. To me, part of the American dream is working for yourself. Potentially at one point in your life, and doing something you love and getting paid to do it is mind-boggling that people can do that.
Well, in part, and I totally agree with you, and I do have a lot of enthusiasm. I still think of many avenues that I wouldn't mind going down and working and so forth, but I also don't want it to absorb me, which is what can happen with a business.
And that can happen with anything in life.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Anything can absorb you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a personality thing, not as so much as a subject thing.
Yes.
And I think that my personality, I don't get too absorbed with things. I have priorities, and you have to know what your priorities are.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
This podcast doesn't come before my family needing something from me.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's just never going to be someone calls me needing help and I go, I can't because of, something like that, if they're falling under that priority.
So, so I've got this idea. I mean, I don't know that I fully understand the social media world fully, but I do know that the job market as it existed while I was working is different now than what it was back then. And social media plays a huge part of it. When I was running the Nature Center here just a couple of years ago, we were looking at digital media as a way of fundraising, in essence. And I know I talked with one big organization, and literally their top 3 ways of fundraising were through Facebook Live and YouTube and Amazon Smile. And so,
I've not heard of that before.
Oh, that's when Amazon will tie nonprofits to the organization. And when you log on to Amazon, like if you want to go buy something, and suppose you want to support, I'm just going to give a generic name, the Funny Zoo. Okay, you want to support the Funny Zoo, a nonprofit zoo organization. Everybody loves animals, and
they're delicious.
You can log on to, instead of Amazon.com, you log on to Amazon.com. I think it is /smile, and you set up within that what organization, what 403b you want to support that's tied into them, and then a percentage of what you purchase goes to that organization.
Oh, that's cool.
So, so it can be very, very profitable.
Gosh, it's hard to love Amazon with a lot of what they're doing, though, on other things. But,
exactly.
God, but it's so easy to buy things.
So in the focused marketing, that, if you're an organization that deals, let's talk about, an organization that deals with animals and so forth, well, you would market your request, your programs and whatnot to those out in the social media world that like animals, Well,
a lot of marketing these days is depending upon, you've heard of target marketing before. That is a very easy, understandable phrase. And it depends on what you're selling, and you have to know your target audience. So podcasts, I'm not trying to get all the old people in the United States to listen to my podcast,
and they probably won't
because exactly. I mean, they're still on AM radio, you know what I mean? If that, and so they get a lot of their stuff from TV, because TV was something that they learned before they stopped learning it at an exponential rate. And so you start to learn so many people under, I would say probably under 40 or 50 are going to everything digital. So you start to realize if you're trying to market a podcast, the majority of the people that listen to podcasts are younger people. You know what I mean? So you're not going to spend a whole bunch of money on AM radio advertisements to get more young people to listen to your podcast, because they're not listening.
No.
But if you're marketing a product that is meant for, people my age, the best way to do it, it would be through a podcast. Like if my favorite podcaster reads an advertisement for a product, there's a likelihood that it's going to interest me. And then that's all they're trying to do is get into the right people. And so much more marketing these days is digital, because the cost of digital marketing, there's nothing printed. You have to create the content, but with a printed thing, you have to create the content, then print it, then ship it, and then people have to get it, and it can't, it gets destroyed along the way. In digital, it's like create it, and then you pay advertisers.
Yep.
It makes it cheaper. It works better for the consumer. It works because you don't get a bunch of mail anymore.
Yep.
And then you don't just get a bunch of stuff you have to throw away and check your mailbox all the time, and
Well, and if people are listening to whatever, I mean, all you got to do is have that right key word in there, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, they're paying attention to it, whether they were paying attention or not beforehand. Let's save the killer whales or whatever. Right. Boom, all of a sudden you got people paying attention to what you're.
Well, that the best recommendation is word of mouth. Like if if I tell you about a product, it's going to mean so much more me telling you about it than if you saw an advertisement on Instagram. If I go, hey, Uncle Keith, I've got this little fidget thing that I got on Amazon. This thing's awesome. You can hold it, play with it, all those things. It's super, super great. That's going to be, if you saw something like that on your Facebook, you would just keep scrolling. You wouldn't even stop for it. But because I've talked to you about it, now imagine that on another scale. People find the podcast they like to listen to, and they trust that person. They go back to that same podcast, whether it's, me or another podcast, wherever they go, I like listening to Ryan, and I'm just going to use me for the example because it's what we're talking about. And so imagine they trust me in everything I do. So if I go, hey, here's this company, I like their product. And that's another thing as somebody who might have advertisers one day is I don't plan on getting an advertiser where I don't really believe in the product myself, because I'm not going to be disingenuous like that. So if it's not something that I would actually use myself, why would I advertise it to my group of people? That I lose credibility there. So I think as a listener of a podcast, if you hear the person you trust, they don't even know you, but you know them because you listen to their podcast, and they go, hey, here's this product I use. It's awesome. It does this, 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 and this. And if you use my discount code with my name in it or whatever, then you get a discount on it. You're like, shoot, it's on sale. Yeah. And he says it's good. That's a much better advertisement than just a TV commercial running between breaks.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the reasons I was interested in this YouTube channel was when I went searching for information on this particular topic, and I found so very little of it out there, information on this specific topic, that and what was out there was so poorly done, with very few details or supporting data for the product. And I do believe there's still a lot of people that want all that detailed information. They want to hear a logical reason you went with this product and why you're supporting this product. And even if I'm not in the sales market necessarily, could you get enough followers on that product that eventually you're able to build a sponsorship revenue stream?
That would be cool, right? Wouldn't it? And then on YouTube you get advertisement and stuff like that if you reach a certain number of subscribers and viewers and stuff. Yep. There's a large possibility. There's a reason that Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, there's a reason that those companies are like the top 15 companies in the United States, is because advertisements are it's not like that's ever going to change. Advertising is just going to change forms.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny if we go back 20 years now, go back to the late 90s, early 2000s, when the internet was just really starting to take off, and people were investing in internet companies left and right, but nobody knew how they were going to make money, is really what it came down to. And then for it to eventually evolve into social media, in most cases, is how they make money, and learning how to collect information, which I guess there are some new laws about that, on people collecting information, and then
that's a whole other subject.
Targeting audiences. And like you said, the cost is so low to target them in most cases.
In comparison to what it previously was.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people were buying at that time, before the internet, it was billboards, it was mailers, it was printed signs, and there was a whole market based around those things, just even printing things. Exactly. And then you have paper, and then you have materials, and companies making different things. I mean, but like a billboard, if you put a billboard on the interstate, I mean, you're just hoping that your target audience drives by and sees it.
Yeah. And really, if you look at the numbers, even on the busiest of interstates, if you look at the number of people that pass a sign in one day compared to what you could be passing it by in social media.
Take the cost of printing it and then put that into the internet, and you're in a much more targeted audience. The return on the investment for businesses is much higher through digital marketing now than it was back in the day.
Yeah. And that was one of the things, that I started investigating when I was running the environmental school, and it enlightened me. What can I say?
Yeah.
And when things are working, I mean, I'm intelligent enough to look and go, all right, what's the outcome of this? Are these companies doing well? Are they not doing well?
Yeah.
And in most cases, they were being successful. So.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest problem is that these internet companies grew at a rate much faster than people anticipated, for good reason. That what they're doing is very beneficial for the user and for the consumer, for the person who's paying for the ads, and then people who are consuming the ads. I've found things because of the internet that I don't think I would have ever found had it not been, or it would have been much more difficult to find. It makes it easier for me to find things that I want to purchase.
Yeah.
Right. But the problem with that, though, is that these companies grew at such a fast rate, and the people that are in politics, the average age of people who are voting on these laws or voting on anything to do with these giant tech companies have no idea what it even is. These are people that don't even use the internet, and they're voting on whether, in my opinion, I don't think Facebook should have ever been allowed to buy Instagram. Google should have never been allowed to buy YouTube, because in this country we have antitrust laws, to prevent companies from becoming too big to where there can be no competition. Now tell me, is there any competition with Google and YouTube?
No.
They were each other's competition until they bought each other. Is there any competition between Facebook and Instagram? No, they own it. They're one company now.
Yeah.
They're Meta.
Yeah.
But whatever. But their biggest competitors, Twitter and now TikTok. But I just think that the people that were voting on that really, I mean, when you watched Mark Zuckerberg is when you watched him get he was in front of Congress or whatever, and he's getting interviewed by older people, and they're asking him questions that, like, even just me as not a person that works in tech or anything like that, or just knows very limited stuff about it, like it really made everybody realize how little these politicians knew about what was going on, because Mark Zuckerberg is getting asked questions that made essentially no sense. Yeah.
Well, and unfortunately, these people in technology, because I've been a piece of this, there's so much thinking that goes into the process of what they're doing, and even if it's not perfect in the initial phases of it, but there's way more thinking than I think the people in Washington can ever hope to be able to ask the right questions, and moving forward.
I just think that they're at a certain point in life, like when I mentioned it earlier, I think that they're at a certain point in life, your rate of learning and being open-minded to new things starts to drop, because you've been around, you've experienced a lot of things, you get set in your ways.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that is terrible. I think just like there's minimum ages that you have to be the president of the United States, I think there should be maximum ages for just politicians in general, because unfortunately you're getting a lot of politicians who can't learn at the rate that they need to do the job that they're doing. So why should somebody be in their 70s or 80s and get to make huge decisions for a company when they're towards the end of their life?
But look at the process of even get elected and how old the process is, and all the questions that are coming up. So the process lends itself to electing those people.
How come the president makes $400,000 a year?
Yeah.
There's no incentive to be a president.
No, absolutely
Why?
not.
Why would? Because a lot of people are getting really PO'd, and they're like, why was Biden and Trump our two best options in the last election?
Yeah.
Why were those the guys that we had to choose between, basically? And it's like, it's because you have smarter people that are out there, but anybody who's smarter doesn't want to be president.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah. Well, and really, I mean, it comes down. I mean, even Trump, he never kept his paycheck from the government for being president. He donated it every time to some organization, and it really it takes somebody that wants to do it for the purpose of supporting the country and making the country better, and anybody that's doing it because of the money.
I don't think there is anyone doing it because of the money.
I think there are people that have gotten so comfortable in the job, and I guess if you look at it as a government job, and I mean, look at a U.S. senator or whatnot, and you look at the binges that come with it, the benefits that come with it, it's not bad, and most of them can see the writing on the wall that they can make more money once they become that popular. They can make more money
after the fact.
And
but there's a lot of. You can, as somebody that would be intelligent enough to be in the United States president spot, you would think that person could create their own business and make more money by doing that.
Then some people's children sell paintings that are worth astronomical amounts of money too.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that there's two kinds of people that want to be president: people who genuinely want to do better for the country and will sacrifice their lives to do so, or there's people who just want absolute control and to be in control of all that stuff, and they just want to have power. And unfortunately, it is so hard to tell the difference between the two because there are actors that become our presidents.
They're all very good at selling themselves, and
you lose the authenticity.
And they learn to say what is going to make them successful, and it makes them look good in many cases.
And they're all about optics, all about how they look.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily about what they're able to accomplish or have accomplished. It's more about the linguistics and the marketing of yourself. Yeah. And some people are very good at that.
Unfortunately, I think that there needs to be some kind of thing that incentivizes people to be president that would pull out the best of the country, not the worst.
Yeah.
It needs to have the best benefits.
Yeah.
I mean, why would somebody who's smart enough to make Amazon like Jeff Bezos decide to be president if he's worth $300 billion or whatever? You know what I mean? Or why would Elon Musk decide to do it?
Well,
you're going to have half the country hate you from the jump.
I don't know that that money or benefits is ever going to incentivize that job. I think it is just something that people are going to have to determine they want to do, plain and simple. I don't think you can put a price tag on it that would benefit. I mean, who do you want? I mean, who is the best person? Is somebody that's already made billions of dollars?
Potentially.
And there's is that let's take a Bill Gates of the world, who's got to be one of the smartest people in the world, and is that the right person to run the country, or is it going to take somebody that's been in the trenches with a blue collar man?
Well, you understand, having worked for as long as you have, that some of the smartest people that you've ever worked with are probably some of the dumbest people, because what they do, as from what I've learned about good leaders, is great leaders, they surround themselves with people that have good information, and then they make decisions based upon information. All a good leader is, or not a good leader per se, but what a good president would be is somebody who surrounds themselves with they can make decisions based upon information, and they have to be open-minded. They have to listen to both sides, and then they have to, they basically have to be a good mediator.
Yeah, and I think the word leader that you started with there, I think you said it right there. There's nothing wrong with tying that word leader to surrounding yourself, because I think that's what it takes. For to be a good leader of anything is to have people around you that support you and that are watching out for you, and providing you the best of information. And
You have to have good teachers around you so you can make the best decisions.
yes, absolutely.
Because, I mean, you don't expect the President of the United States, and clearly they're not this way, is to understand everything and be incredibly intelligent. You want them to just make incredibly good decisions.
Yeah. And sometimes the scientific answer is the best answer.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not the best. So
Right.
so what I'm getting at is, even if you are smart, even if academically you're extremely talented and you may know the science of the subject, sometimes you got to take into account the what I'm going to call the soft skills, the people side of
communication.
the people side of things, and what's the impact of that decision going to do.
Yep.
So it's tough. It's tough balancing, and that's
Yep.
what politicians get good at, is balancing the sides
Good
of the
at,
story.
quote.
But the unfortunate part is whether they are able to actually accomplish anything in that job, and that's where so many of them fail. And because of the way our government is set up, so that things don't change fast, they change slow over time, because you've got to build agreement amongst different kinds of people, and that's what continually moves the direction of the country, hopefully forward, and hopefully in a right direction. And you don't make any real drastic changes along the way, or change decisions.
Yeah. I hope that in the future we can have presidents that are that want the best for the country. Some of the problem with the last couple of elections is some of the people that have ran for president, and to me fit those categories, didn't even make it to the final round. Of being selected to be the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate. And it's sad, but I think nowadays you're seeing people, at least my age and younger people, they get much more out of people being completely authentic and realizing that everyone's human, and that if you have a president like John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was incredibly powerful in his speeches, and he put on this big persona of, and he seems like a strong leader when he was a president, but they didn't talk about how he was doing drugs. They didn't talk about how he had multiple affairs. Like that was a regular thing for him to do, and they were able to shield much more of the things that were happening when he was as a president. And instead, people are leaning more towards people just being open and honest. That's why I believe that is a huge proponent of why Joe Rogan's podcast has become as giant as it has, is because he is willing to have discussions with people he doesn't agree with, and to find out, he is a big proponent of free speech, and the idea that the only way to understand what's right and what's wrong is to be able to talk about both, and to being able to decide. And I think his level of authenticity, of him not being able to talk about who he is what makes it so big. I mean, there's so many people that think he's going to be the president one day, and I wouldn't be surprised. But he swears all the time. He's a stand-up comedian. There's a lot of things that he is that people of your age or older wouldn't necessarily. They'd be like, oh my God, I never would have guessed somebody who smokes pot and drinks all the time is going to be president. It's like, okay, all the other presidents did it. You know what I mean? They just were able to better at hiding it.
I think in recent years, our politics in this country has gone from less middle of the road and more extreme. An extreme based on either conservative or progressive agendas. And I think we're coming back to the middle again.
I think that I agree with you on that. I'm sorry to interject, but I think the reason is because those far right, far left people are the reason that those people are getting so much attention is because they're the smallest, they're the minorities, and that the majority of the country is in the center.
Yes.
I would say, and they don't talk about it. And you get the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And the grease being and most of the country at this point is sick of it. Sick of seeing the far right and the far left on the news all the time.
Well, and even when we go back 20, 25 years ago, when there became more accountability in the schools with state testing and so forth, that was a push to more of an extreme accountability, yes, than what had been there previously. Everything had been before that more middle of the road, and let's not rock the ship, and let's not push these issues. You need to be patient, wait for things to happen, and so forth. Well, people kind of got tired of that and wanted things to happen and happen faster. And that's when your state accountability test came into play, accountability of schools, what grade is the school, blah, blah, blah. And then we start running into it, at even a higher level in the presidency and getting into more extreme ideas. It'd be interesting to see what the near future brings, what direction. The pendulum tends to swing over time. And we're already hearing talk here in the state of Florida of getting rid of the state test for education and going to a progress monitoring model, which basically means we're just going to watch a kid with a bunch of little tests. Now, whether that means school grades will disappear, I wouldn't doubt over time. I wouldn't doubt over time that it does. And so,
well, isn't that just a metric to measure by? Isn't that essentially what grades are used as? It's a way to track progress over time?
Well, but it's also being used as a way to help exit poor teachers as well, which has its benefit. But
are you saying it's more just the grading system is just going to be changing forms?
I'm not so sure that it won't disappear. I don't know. I mean,
but it'll become something different. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a very good chance it'll become something different.
It won't be A's, B's, C's. It'll be here's this graph of this student's progress over time on how well they're doing in comparison to other children, which is essentially what grades were used for before the internet.
So I have no idea what it's going to look like down the road.
I can't imagine something like that would go away because it's how we people are measured.
Yeah.
Anything that can be measured can be improved.
Yeah. So, but realize before that was started in the 90s, there was never a school grade out there.
It was just this kid's dumb or this kid's smart.
Well, and I mean, they tested kids on a regular basis to kind of see where they fell, but there wasn't an accountability to necessarily improve that child. Okay, and we assumed that teachers were well educated and knew the best thing to do, especially with the supervision and support of a principal and an assistant principal, and knew what to do best for children. But there was no real accountability. Well, when they started adding accountability, it's also started adding pressure to the position of a teacher and to the position of a student as well. I've seen way too many children in elementary schools. So we're talking kids that are 8, 9, 10 years old, 11 years old, that get very, very upset during the testing, the high-stakes testing, and it could literally make themselves sick and throw up.
Yeah.
Or other ways of and so the stakes are there and you could see it with the teachers, you could see it with the children, you can see it in the principals and the district, and everything that's been done in the last 25 years has been based around performance of the schools, the children, the teachers. And so now the question is, what's that going to look like 5-10 years from now?
Well, it leads me to something I told you I wanted to talk about before the podcast. So I think a lot about, as a country, we just finished talking about politics and now we're switching towards school. And you're like my resident expert on school stuff. Since you were in education system for how long?
Almost 40 years.
Jeez. Wow. That's a lot of time. And so my thought is if we all good, Colton? Okay. My thought is if you want the country to be a better place, you look at like as majority in generalizations, you would want better adults because adults are what essentially runs the country and drives the driving factors of the country. So to have better adults, what do you have to do? Well, you have to train them to be adults. The name of the podcast is Somehow We're Adults because you just graduate high school one day and you're like, oh shit, what now? Yeah. And you're like, okay, where is everybody else going? Okay, everyone else is going to college. Let me go to college. Well, what do you want to go for? I don't know. What do I want to do for the rest of my life? I don't know. I don't have any hobbies. I was, doing sports at school and I was in band or I was doing stuff that essentially has almost no transferable knowledge to the majority of what the working class do. I think college is not what it used to be, and I think you'd probably agree to that. College used to be... The problem with college is it became a really big business. And because of that, they're just looking to make money, and so they've created all these degrees that don't make money for individuals, but make money for the college.
Sure.
And so
there's many degrees that are tied to television shows these days. CSI, crime scene investigators. That's some of the hottest college degrees out there, even if there aren't that many jobs.
There's not enough jobs for the market. You've talked about that on the previous podcast.
Yeah.
And so my thought is if you look at what the general people do, if you look at like what the biggest percentages of the countries are going to be doing, those are jobs that you get no essential training for, or there's no life skills. There's no skills that you learn in school directly as like a direction of being taught them. One thing that pisses me off is there used to be home ec classes when you grew up. That's not a requirement anymore. But the required classes are stuff that you might never use again. And in most cases, I would say probably 90% of the population does not use again. And it really bothers me that everyone has to eat. Would you agree? I think most people would agree everyone has to eat, but no one is taught how to cook. How many people die of food poisoning because they didn't learn of proper handling of food? I think a huge part of the problem with not a problem, but like a large reason for the majority of the population being poor is because of lack of knowledge of how to not be poor. What skills can we teach a kid? A lot of the problems with kids that end up in gangs and end up in inner cities and bad parts is they don't have any. Their male role models are all doing that same thing as well.
Yes.
A huge problem with the country is single parent households. Well, essentially, how do you when say one mom has to raise 4 kids and they want to not live in a shitty neighborhood, well, they have to work several jobs to do so they're not there to raise those kids as much as they'd like to be. Or their other option is work less jobs but live in the middle of this bad area, and then those kids become a product of their environment. And you can't blame those kids. And so I think the school systems in those areas should be better channeled to help those children to learn things that lead them down a path to put them on towards success. I don't think trying to make a bunch of inner city kids that they don't know where their meal that night's going to be coming from try to learn the Pythagorean theorem. I think that you're throwing shit at a wall hoping it sticks. And it just is not going to in those cases, or if it does, it's a diamond in the rough. And it's just, I think that everyone should not be illiterate. People should learn to read and write, and everyone should learn up to a certain level of what is taught in school. But I think starting and ending around middle school or beginning of high school, I think that a lot of those skills should shift. I think mandatory classes in elementary school, in my personal opinion, should be something to do with communication. Because those are formative years of your life. You should learn, to read, to write, to add, to do basic math and stuff like that. And basic science and stuff like that. But a lot of it should be, that's the best times to learn multiple languages. Maybe instead of, I heard the other day that foreign languages in high school isn't mandatory anymore, but it is in college. Like that's the heart. The older you get, there's a lot of data proving this, the harder it is to learn a new language. So why wouldn't we start kids and say it's mandatory in elementary school to take a foreign language class? You pick the foreign language, but we're going to teach you to communicate multiple ways, because then you can learn about other cultures, because you can communicate to other cultures within other cultures. And I think that communication would be a huge one, just separate of that, learning to talk with other people and not having your way the whole time, because if you're raised as an only child, I mean, when you're at home, you're probably not communicating with other kids your age and learning to share and all that stuff, and that transfers when you go to school too. I think that this is gonna be where it splits the room right now. I think that gun safety should be mandatory in elementary school. But my thought, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, being a pro Second Amendment person, is if it was a big enough deal for our founding fathers to say that in the first thing they said, freedom of speech, right?
Yep.
And the second thing was everyone should have the right to bear arms.
Yep.
And I don't think that everyone should have to bear arms. I'm not saying you have to bear arms, but the people who are the most gun adverse in life are typically the people who have the least amount of experience. Think about anything you've never done before, how scary it is the first time you do it.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same way with firearms.
Yeah.
The people who are the most scared of them are the ones who have never dealt with them or touched them, you can teach kids gun safety in school, and I feel like that would make a huge difference on how much gun violence really happens in the United States, especially if you're doing a better job of making sure. I mean, granted, that the hard part is it puts more in the teachers will cause more impact, but I don't think that the teachers don't have impact now. I think it restructures and channels that impact in a way that is beneficial to society. And I think there's a lot of potential in the school system that is being lost because of the curriculum that they're being taught.
Yeah. Well, Well, there's a lot tied up in what you just went through, and
it's an incomplete thought that I've been thinking about trying to get.
And I've spent a lot of my career, and I had an opportunity to sit in on a meeting when I first started teaching at the high school I was teaching at with it was actually the commissioner of agriculture came to our school, where we kind of got into this type of discussion. Let me take a step back and say, first of all, a big part of the reason the law isn't changing, it's all about money. Okay? A big part of it is. Now, with that said, the other part of it is reinventing education in the way that you're talking about is a process that would take 20 plus years to happen.
At the fastest.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we don't start now, if we wait until it's too late, then, it's something that needs to start being incorporated and being talked about. Yeah. In my opinion. I think that's how you solve problems in this country is by talking about them.
Well, and then the other part of it, especially when you start pre-targeting children, that's become a big topic of discussion, that if you target a child at a young age, whatever that is, elementary age, middle school age, even high school age, that you're not going to be college bound. A lot of people have a problem with that. Okay, and if it's a choice, it's one thing. But even that, whose choice should it be? Should it be the child's choice? Should it be the parent's choice? Okay,
these are great questions.
And a lot of parents, even with their best intent, don't necessarily make the best choice with their children. I mean, parenting. Remember, there is no training guide to be a parent. And so
I think that's part of the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Not saying there needs to be a training guide, but I would say we have a parenting crisis in the United States.
Well, that's it. And so a lot of things that you're talking about historically have been handled by the parents. The kid comes to school for 6 hours a day and then's gone for 18 hours a day. So where do the parents' responsibility fill in to this?
I think it's a two-edged sword. I think that there's responsibility on both sides.
Yep.
I would think.
And there are state laws. I'll give you an example. When it came to acting as a principal of the Nature Center, there is a state law that the school district is responsible to teach kindness to animals to every child that comes through.
I would say that's a good thing.
Okay. Now, the problem is, where does that fit into your curriculum? And in my case, because every single sixth grader in the county came through my program, then they put that responsibility, or we were used as the primary example of teaching that to the children. But now if they went to another county that didn't have
the same opportunity,
how do they do it? I don't know. Or whether it even comes up in most cases. Most parents don't know there's that state law. Heavens knows that most teachers don't know there's that state law.
I had no idea.
The other real issue with the whole concept is most adults, most teachers aren't anywhere near qualified to teach the subjects you're talking about.
Because they went through the same school system that
That's
they're putting
right.
kids through.
That's right. And reading, writing, arithmetic, that was kind of the thing. And I will add one other thing. A big part of what the school district, the schools in this country are tasked with is trying to teach kids to think. And believe it or not, some of the silliest things that you learn, I'm going to give the example, when you took geometry in high school and you learned about proofs and theorems and so forth, that was all about thinking. You'll never do proofs and theorems again. But, well, it gets into logic and how to logically work through a problem.
Yeah, but why don't they change? I'm not saying they should take that away. They should reform it into, okay, anybody can buy power tools and sheets of plywood, and but I would say 99.9% of high schoolers couldn't build a basic level like woodcraft project. It used to be not mandatory. It used to be an elective back when you went to school, and so many schools don't have that as an elective course.
That is correct.
And
that all disappeared.
That would be a good way of teaching people to think on their run.
Well, and that all disappeared as state accountability became more and more important. Trust me, if kids aren't performing, they're going to get another dose of whatever it is that they're underperforming in. And there's so much pressure. And he realized the state's taking over schools that are not performing. The state's going to, and the counties are going to close schools that are not performing. It's happening right now, and particularly in the last few years that we've had here in this county already, I think 5 to 10 schools taken over by state-mandated private companies.
Really?
Yes.
I think that's a problem too.
Yeah.
Private companies mixed in with the state.
Well, and I can understand the need for accountability. It is needed in many ways to make sure that everybody is performing at a high level. So finding that balancing act is really tricky to figure out. How do you balance that? How do you use that to get rid of bad teachers and yet not put pressure on everybody else?
Well, I think they should start redirecting the curriculum.
And do you want people taught at a high level? Or, one way to do it would be just say, all right, every student needs to just reach this middle level.
Well, wouldn't you say there's a high level of everything in life? There's people who are the best sprinters in the world, but there's people who can't run.
And there are people that will never run because they don't want to bad enough.
They don't challenge themselves.
They don't.
And
yeah.
I think all you're doing is changing the channel. You're not like, in my opinion, what you're doing is you're teaching kids to be really, really good at math, but the real things you can do with math of like high degree level calculus is teach that subject, is essentially the jobs that are in that field. And you want to teach more high schoolers. You want better people doing better at the jobs. That was the whole point of college, is you want people to be better in the career field when they enter the career field. That's better for the country.
Well, but that becomes the real question. Is it better? Is it, anytime you get closer to talking about a specific job, then you need to focus more and more on the specific skills of that job. And when you focus more on the specific skills of that job, now, could it be, that was my one dream in life, was to rewrite all our curriculum to make it hands-on curriculum. Teach the concepts that you need to teach, but do it through learning to use or how to run a machine shop, a metal lathe, or CNC machine, or something like that.
One of the best teachers I've ever had, he's been on the podcast before, was Chef Paul, because you learned concepts about food, then you went and did it hands-on, you got to see it firsthand, and then you got to eat it too. And you're like, wow, what you got to learn about it, which was the least fun, and everyone will admit to learning about that stuff is the least fun. How many kids are disengaged in school because they're just uninterested in? But then you go to the thing that's interesting, that puts the pen to the paper, and you learn about it, and then you get rewarded by your good work. Job satisfaction is a huge thing. Now, I think that that's transferable in school as well. And I think that, I'm kind of like blanking on the point that I was going to make, but essentially is that like, that you can still have people that are challenged, but it's just going to be like, oh, and here's the point. I remember what it was. Would you agree that you having employed people, interviewed people, hired people, you can have somebody who is great at teaching but has a horrible home life. They're a terrible adult. And you would think that you want somebody who holistically has a good home life, is a good teacher. You want somebody who is good in multiple facets of their life. That's something you've talked about on the podcast before.
Sure, a well-rounded person.
And you want well-rounded people. Yeah. Well, if you're not, the curriculum now teaches people to go into specific career fields. Basically, the school system now teaches people to go to college. And that's the skill set. And it's because college has become a business that is, you can't bankrupt yourself out of student loans. They're with you for forever. They'll dock Social Security for people that haven't paid off their student loans. And so my thing is if okay, you want people to be holistically good, what are things that we can teach kids to be better at that makes at least one part of their holistic perspective better? You're teaching kids to where they just know how to cook. It comes easy. They know that they're going to know how to feed themselves at the end of the day. Like then they're going to have more energy to focus and learn once they get into the actual career field. Would be my argument for that.
Well, and again, finding people that could even teach that way, because
you would change from needing to hire teachers to hire people in those fields that can, as a side thing, teach. Chef Paul did not go to school to become a teacher. Chef Paul went to school to become a chef, and then now he has transitioned to becoming a teacher. He was amazing, and he was what are they, an A teacher? Is that what they call it? Is that what?
They had highly effective.
He's been highly effective for years. Because his hands-on approach
but unfortunately, not everybody's in that realm, and so, for example, suppose you and we could talk about it as a chef, for instance, that he has great cooking skills, but if we move in this direction, he would also need to be a great communicator, educator of mathematics, of science, of reading, of writing. So you'd want to integrate all those subject areas into the teaching of cooking that he's doing.
Right.
And so in finding people that are good cooks and that can work with kids is just one step of it. Then trying to put the other. Another thing I learned.
That's why I think that there's like, I'm not shitting on the entire curriculum. I think that's why I was saying in elementary school you do have to learn to read, write, add, subtract, multiply, divide, PEMDAS.
I heard something less than a year ago from a lady that worked with me, and her husband had been an agriculture teacher. And of course, as there's become more pressure to perform academically, that's pulled away from all your electives, including agriculture,
which is a good portion of this country.
Okay, so let's take a step sideways. If a child is not a good reader, and that's where it all begins typically, then not only is he going to have the one reading class that everybody else takes, but they're going to make him take a second reading class. Well, where does that time in the day come out? It comes out of agriculture. Okay, so one of the things I learned with this lady whose husband now a retired agriculture teacher, but the last number of years is they became certified reading teachers as well, and so they could be the teacher of record teaching that kid to read in this extra class while teaching them agriculture as well
simultaneously.
And so
two birds in one stone kind of thing.
Exactly, and that's. And that's a direction that would really change education is if you could get people to feel that sense of urgency that they had to do more than just that one job of theirs. But, unions have had a lot of say in what's going on. Right now, unions have had more say in the last couple of years than they did in the past. And of course, they tend not to lean in that direction because they're supporting their customer, the teacher, and the teacher doesn't want to go in that direction in most cases. Now, I had a couple of teachers come work for me when I was at the elementary school that they wanted to teach all subjects. They didn't want to get into departmentalizing like so many schools had. Instead of you being a specialist in an elementary math and an elementary science only, they wanted to teach the reading, writing, math, and science so that they could integrate all those pieces together. Okay? You find less and less of that these days. You will find it with some people that just wanted control of the whole room, but these teachers wanted to do it for the benefit of the children so that they could integrate all the topics together and provide a better product for the children. So it's tough, but I definitely agree with the idea, and I think it could be done. But somebody's going to have to start over from square one.
Well, I think you just need to call attention to it. Call attention to it, and then start incorporating piece by piece. You don't turn a ship all at one time. You do it percentage at a time.
But if there's not if there's not that person carrying that ball, those people that are at the top, typically or close to the top, will put up barriers because they just see it as unobtainable. And it takes somebody that has the passion, the enthusiasm, the energy, open-mindedness,
being new to the subject.
Yeah.
I'm not in the education system, but I'm clearly I'm able to discuss this at a level where obviously it's very idealistic. But maybe that's what these people at the top need to hear, is somebody who's idealistic, and then put a portion of it out of work, and just it's, you eat an elephant a bite at a time.
Somebody your age, mid-20s, for years there was not any opportunities to move into roles that had real influence. I know somebody that was in his late 20s wanting to become an assistant principal. And basically, he was a chemistry teacher.
It's almost laughable.
Yeah, it was almost laughable. You haven't done your time yet, okay? And he left education and went back to the private sector.
For good reason.
Yeah, because of opportunity. And now I think there's more opportunity now than there ever has been at it. But and you could even go as far as to start your own charter school, for instance. Get funding, state funding, to help it, but offer it in this whole new package. So there's opportunity out there. Is the county going to necessarily go there and rewrite all this curriculum? It's a lot of work. Rewrite all this curriculum based on this whole new philosophy of teaching.
Where there's no proven science or anything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take somebody building their support, building the people around them to go down that road.
It needs to build its own reputation. It needs to have its own 2 feet to stand on.
Yeah.
Now, before, I know you said you had till about 11.
Yep.
So in the last 5 minutes, I want to talk about. I wanted to mention. I think that a huge problem with school is that kids are uninterested in their subjects, and because they're uninterested, they have that energy that they have, but because in class they're so bored out of their minds that they're just working through it, and then they get home and they explode with all this energy, and then that's how I think that there is a big issue with so many kids becoming ADHD or ADD, because they can't focus on something that they're not interested in all at school. And I think that when you start putting kids on these, what are they, suppressants? Or,
the medications.
Yeah. These medications that basically make their kid tired because their kid has all this energy. But it's like, I think that just too many kids have energy that's not being expelled because they're learning about subjects they're uninterested in. And I'm not saying you have to cater to every kid and only do stuff they're interested in, because that can go off on a very, very far tangent. But I think a lot of what you were saying about being hands-on, I think would help a lot of kids as well.
Exactly. And I don't think ADHD is caused by the kids sitting in the classroom for 6 hours a day. Does it benefit the kid to sit there for 6 hours? No, it doesn't. And if you looked at...
It's a multifaceted thing.
What a good classroom looks like these days, the kids aren't just sitting there. And when the county here, Hillsborough County Schools, received the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant for $100 million to basically reinvent teaching, they pushed the school district in that direction to have the work being done more student-centered and less teacher-centered, and the teacher evaluation that way. So I've seen some really good classrooms where teachers are really engaging with the children, and they're successful. To me, the ADHD almost ties more to the lack of stability in the home life and the lack of parental skills.
But that's like the double-edged sword again, because if households have that problem, but then you're doing school on top of it in that same area. If the school system relies on the parents are going to rely on the school system.
Yeah.
Essentially schools to a certain point are to educate people while also simultaneously babysitting them while the parents
Exactly.
work.
And parents aren't doing enough because in many cases they're tired or they don't have the skills to raise the children and to have the discussions with their children that they need to be having. And really, in the end, all children want is their parents to, and be involved in their life.
Same thing with their teachers.
Yeah.
They want to feel like they're involved.
Yep, exactly. So,
well, I think that's a good message to go out on.
Okay.
Is that we need more parents being involved, more teachers being involved, and taking extreme ownership and accountability for, if your kid's got some issues going on, don't blame it on someone else. Do everything in your power to take control of it. I would say would probably be the message there.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely, it's been fun.
All right, thanks.
2 hours flew by.
I know. It really did. I'm kind of sad that you had to go. But,
next time I expect my own Hornaday hat.
Yeah, Hornady.
I'm sure you got a closet full of them. Ready to.
Yeah, I don't make my uncle's money yet. So, all right, thanks.
All right,
thanks, Keith.
Sure enough, Ryan.
Hello, everybody. This episode is over, but if you would like to support the podcast, you can head on over to the Instagram account to Somehow We're Adults and use the link in the bio to donate to the PayPal account there. All of the money that is donated will be used to make the podcast better. But either way, I'll keep it going. Make sure to follow the podcast where you listen to it for future episodes of Somehow We're Adults. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.